Right now, you believe you are choosing to read this. You feel it, the sense of intention, the quiet certainty that you decided just a moment ago to let your eyes move across these words. That feeling is so immediate, so obvious, so completely yours, that questioning it seems almost absurd. But what if that feeling is the last thing that happens, not the first? What if by the time you feel yourself deciding, the decision is already made? This is not philosophy. This is not a thought experiment cooked up in an armchair. This is what the data shows. And once you understand what happened inside a laboratory in 1983, you will never look at your own choices the same way again. Benjamin Libet was a neuroscientist at the University of California, San Francisco. He was quiet, methodical, and deeply uncomfortable with easy answers. In the early 1980s, he designed an experiment so simple it almost seemed too small to matter. He asked volunteers to sit in front of a clock and flex their wrist whenever they felt like it. Whenever they wanted. No instructions about timing. No pressure. Just move when the urge hits you. While they did this, Libet measured two things. First, he recorded the electrical activity building up in their motor cortex, the region of the brain that fires before a physical movement. That electrical buildup is called the readiness potential. Second, he asked the volunteers to note the exact position of the clock hand at the moment they first felt the urge to move. The results stopped him cold. The readiness potential, that unconscious surge of neural activity, began firing on average 550 milliseconds before the wrist actually moved. That part was expected. The brain needs time to prepare the body. What was not expected was this. The volunteers reported feeling the conscious urge to move roughly 200 milliseconds before the movement, which means the brain had already started preparing the action 350 milliseconds before the person was even aware they wanted to do it. The decision, in the measurable physical sense, came first. The feeling of deciding came second. You have been living your whole life believing the story starts with you. Libet's data suggested the story starts somewhere else, and you arrive just in time for the last chapter. Now, sit with that for a moment, because your brain right now is doing something very specific. It is resisting. It is generating objections. It is reaching for an exit. That resistance itself, that instinct to push back, you did not decide to have it. It rose up on its own. The philosopher Dennett spent years arguing that Libet's interpretation was too fast, too clean, too willing to hand over the steering wheel. He proposed that consciousness is not a single moment, but a process, a constant revision, a rewriting of the story as it happens. What you call a decision, Dennett would say, is not a flash, but a negotiation, and that negotiation is still you. But here is where it gets stranger. In 2008, a team of researchers led by John Dylan Haynes at the Bernstein Center for Computational Neuroscience in Berlin pushed Libet's experiment into territory that felt almost science-fictional. Using fMRI brain scans, Haynes and his colleagues could watch participants' brains in real time as they decided to press a button with either their left or right hand. The participants chose freely, whenever they felt like it, and the scans revealed something that should have been impossible. Up to 10 seconds before the participants reported consciously deciding which hand to use, the pattern of activity in their prefrontal and parietal cortex already contained enough information to predict which hand they would choose with accuracy significantly above chance. 10 seconds. Before they knew, the brain had already moved toward the answer. The conscious mind had not caught up yet. Your first reaction to this might be, fine. Maybe the brain decides a little early. Maybe consciousness is just a delayed readout. But the sense of being the author, the sense of being the one steering that is still real, that still counts. Except, the question Haynes raised was not about timing. It was about authorship. If the outcome is already encoded in unconscious brain activity before the conscious mind gets involved, in what sense is the conscious mind the one deciding? In what sense are you, the version of you who narrates your own life, actually in control? The neuroscientist Sam Harris put it this way: you can do what you decide to do, but you cannot decide what you will decide. The thoughts arise, the urges surface, the choices crystallize. And then, a fraction of a second later, You experience them as yours. You feel like the rider. The data suggests you might be the horse noticing the destination after the ride has already begun. And here is the part nobody talks about. If this is true, even partially true, it does not mean nothing matters. It does not mean you should stop trying to make good choices. Because the system that is generating your behavior is still you. Your history, your experiences, your fears, your values, all of that is encoded in the same neural architecture that's running ahead of your conscious awareness. Your past is steering your future. You just are not watching it happen in real time. In 2019, researchers at Columbia University, studying patients with epilepsy, found something that added another layer. When certain neurons in the supplementary motor area were stimulated artificially, patients reported feeling a sudden urge to move, an urge that felt completely voluntary, completely internal, completely theirs. They had no idea the feeling was planted. To them, it was just a decision. The line between a choice that comes from you and a choice that is made for you may not be a line at all. It may be a gradient, a spectrum, a question your brain does not have the hardware to answer. So what do you do with this? You wake up tomorrow. You make coffee, or you do not. You call someone you have been avoiding, or you put it off again. You reach for your phone first thing, or you try, for the 100th time, not to. And in every one of those moments, somewhere in the architecture of your brain, the process has already started. The pattern is already forming. The readiness potential is already building. The question is not whether you can escape that process. You cannot. The question is what you have been feeding that process, what experiences, what habits, what environments you have been giving it to work with, because that is the only upstream lever you actually have. You thought free will was about the moment of choice. It turns out, if it exists at all, it lives much earlier than that. Right now, you believe you are choosing what to do next. Maybe you are. Maybe that belief itself is the last piece of the circuit completing. But somewhere in the quiet dark of your prefrontal cortex, the answer is already on its way to you.